Pre-owned home sellers are in trouble because they can't compete with new construction. That means opportunity knocks for buyers out there, and we need to talk about it. Hey everyone, I'm Wendy Pinnell, and the brutal truth when it comes to pre-owned homes is that they can't compete against the fancy incentives new construction offers. They also can't compete with having a brand new home. So they have their own whole other level of motivation that we can capitalize on. And this is important because so many of you are being called back to the office and having to consider pre-owned homes that are closer by, right? I mean, yeah, you'd rather have something new and shiny, but you also don't want, an hour-long commute. And of course, you also want those excellent schools, which limit your choices even more. Okay, so if you're having to swallow the idea of a pre-owned home, you can at least know there are a lot of motivated sellers out there. We also know that much of the lack of demand for pre-owned homes is because they can't offer the kinds of incentives that new construction builders are offering. I mean, for example, builders can offer what's called a forward commitment, but your average homeowner just can't do that. Now you're probably wondering what that is, a forward commitment. Well, suffice it to say, it's what allows new construction builders to offer interest rates at 4% when going rate is 7%. And I'm telling you right now, individual home sellers, they cannot compete with that. On top of financial incentives, builders can also offer a new and shiny home. Like pre-owned homes obviously can't offer that either, right? I mean, you can't deny the fact that there's something to be said about moving into a home that no one else has ever lived in. Even if a seller were to redo the entire cosmetic structure of the home, you still have all the old systems. I mean, even if they replace the HVAC and other systems, right, you still have all the plumbing underneath and the wiring inside the walls. Plus, buyers of pre-owned homes don't get that nice, generous warranty that comes with new construction either. And here's another truth we have to face, okay? Builders have deep pockets, right? Builders are known to offer huge contributions toward closing costs. And this is in addition to the forward commitment we talked about earlier. Pre-owned sellers, right, they don't have those deep pockets. Okay, they can't choose to make less on one house and make up for it by making more on another. Builders are also, they're sometimes known for offering 6% commissions just to the buyer agent. Okay, now that would equate to like a pre-owned home seller having to pay what, 8, 9%? In commissions, because they have to pay their listing agent, right? They have to pay them as well as a buyer's agent. So ultimately, a builder just has more options. And again, your individual home seller just can't compete. So if we know we have opportunity out there, what's our first step? All right, well, our first step when we're negotiating is to find those motivated sellers, okay? So how are we gonna do that? Well, our first step, I've already alluded to, okay? It's to look for pre-owned homes next to new construction. Okay, here they are, right? Same neighborhood, unable to offer low interest rates. Carpet's probably worn, right? The home is obviously lived in, and they're like right up next to shiny new construction, right? You are bound to find motivated sellers here. Another surefire win is to buy in the fall and winter, okay? Now you probably already heard me talk about Dallas's seasonal changes in the market. And if you're not acquainted with seasonality, okay, it essentially means that Dallas experiences predictable fluctuations in prices throughout the year, every year, okay? Home prices typically begin to rise from like March, reaching their peak in June. And then July, marks the start of when you'll see like a decline in prices, continuing until they reach their lowest point in January. So for you buyers, okay, know that pretty much any pre-owned home seller is probably going to be more motivated in the fall and winter. Another option is to look for listings with long days on the market. Whether they have specific timelines pressuring them or not, any seller is going to be discouraged after not selling for several months. Paul Asasian, a major real estate investor, shares a list of sellers who might be motivated. He explains that under the pressure of time, people become more flexible. If a seller is motivated to sell fast for whatever reason, you will be more likely to receive the deal you want. He then explains several pressure points that could really motivate a seller. For example, when a homeowner is nearing foreclosure, okay, they have to sell and sell fast. Sometimes a homeowner is closing on another property and they can't afford to pay for both mortgages, or they have a contingency of their offer with the other home. And in this case, the seller could actually lose their contract with their new home if they don't get their current home sold. Other examples of motivated sellers include when a homeowner is going through a probate case or when a homeowner is a tax delinquent. Okay, moving on to the second step, complete a market analysis. Okay, this is so important because you have to know where to start. And we just tell you, it isn't the list price. Okay, we don't take stock in the list price, even if the price has been reduced, okay? We focus on the actual value through a market analysis. All right, this will give you a much better idea of the home's actual value. A realtor's going to have to do this one for you, okay? And if you have a good realtor, okay, they should always offer to do this for you before you even think about placing an offer. Next up, step number 3, submit your offer. Okay, so you found a highly motivated seller, right? And you're ready to get a great deal. Now, keep in mind the strategies I'm about to share with you will only work with a highly motivated seller in a stagnant market. All right, now I want to start off by having you put yourself in the mind of the seller, okay? They essentially want 4 things. All right, they want the highest price they can get in the least complicated way they can get it, with the highest degree of certainty they can get, and in the timing that works best for them. We want to use all 4 of these things, okay, to try to get the best possible deal for you as the buyer. Now, the first 3 things, they're all no-brainers, right? Okay, but when it comes to timing, that truly is a variable. All right, we need to be checking in with the listing agent to see what works best for the seller. All right, do they want a quick close, or do they want a slower close, possibly even with a lease back? Now, ultimately, as the buyer, your number 1 goal is probably to get, the best price you can. So when we begin the offer price, okay, your number 1 focus should be just the price. Now, by now, you should have a reasonably good idea of an offer price that will at least get the sellers talking to you, but still give ample space for negotiations. All right, your focus here is offering just enough to get a conversation started. And that holds true for the rest of this offer as well. Okay, we're not giving anything away here. If they want a fast closing, we're offering just an ordinary closing time, okay? For example, 6 weeks. Next, you'll probably want to offer somewhere around like a 1% of the offer price for an earnest money deposit. And this is the average percentage, right, that you'll tend to see, and it's a good amount to stick with. So don't go overboard here, okay? Even if you could pay more, okay? Don't. Next, don't do any favors with the option period. Okay, typical in Texas is you might see like a 7-day option period. Go ahead and ask for that. These are all standard features in an offer, but they're not aggressive. With a motivated seller, right, you might also request like a $600 allowance for a home warranty. You might ask the seller to pay the title policy and survey and ask them to pay any HOA related expenses. Be sure to state that the home has to appraise for the purchase price in your offer. Now, it doesn't matter if you can close sooner, or you could put in a larger deposit, or you could make do if the home didn't appraise. Keep in mind, all of these terms are just in your initial offer. You may not actually end up with all of these terms, okay? But what you're creating here are potential negotiating points, all right? These terms are setting you up to negotiate for what is, most often the ultimate goal of a low price. Paul Asajian shares his opinion on the tactics of a smart buyer. He says a buyer never negotiates over just one issue. They always have topics in their queue ready to go. He also mentions a very important point when it comes to the seller. Try to learn as much as you can beforehand so you are familiar with their wants and needs. Before putting in an offer on a previously owned home, we consistently make it a practice to consult with the listing agent to understand the seller's priorities for an offer. At the end of the day, if you can offer what they want to see in terms other than price, you'll have much better chances of getting your offer accepted for the price you want to pay. Paul Asajian elaborates on this. He says the party with the most flexibility in a negotiation has the most power. Now, if you have a large down payment, it is good to show that up front. Okay, you want to show that you're well funded. Okay, so we're coming in with a low price. On a home worth $350,000, for example, you might come in at say $310,000. What you want is the bare minimum that will get a conversation started. The worst they can do is say, we're not even gonna respond to this, right? And in that case, they'll generally say something like, please submit an offer closer to the list price. Okay, the 4th step, first response from seller. Usually a motivated seller will respond somewhere in the middle of the list price and your price, okay? And that's why you wanted to get that conversation started with as generous and large a gap as possible, because you're defining a more generous middle. Whatever they counter with, all right, we're gonna respond with the various things the home needs, okay? It's only gonna be based on what's visible at this point, right? Because you haven't had the home inspected. So it might be things like, flooring, paint, that the home needs, gutters, fence repair, okay? And we're going to justify our low price based on anything we can find that the home needs. And what this does, okay, is it sort of puts the listing agent and sellers on the defensive. And remember, this seller is very motivated. He doesn't want to lose you as a buyer. At this step, we're just focusing on price. It may take us a few days of going back and forth, pushing the boundaries for how low in price we can get. Okay. Once we get the seller to swallow the absolute lowest price reduction we can get out of them, we're ready to move on to our next step, negotiate the other variables. Now, this is where Brian Davis nails it when he asks, other than a higher price, what would make your offer more attractive to the seller? Right? He goes on to describe several scenarios. He says some sellers need to sell yesterday. Many sellers crave certainty. Some sellers need flexibility. And he concludes, oftentimes these sellers will accept a far lower price. This is where you really have the upper hand buying pre-owned versus new construction. The Trek pre-owned home contract has tons of terms that are all negotiable between the buyer and seller. When you buy new construction, okay, much less of that contract is negotiable. So maybe the list price was $350,000 and we got them down to $325,000. This is the time we come back with other variables. Now, remember all those terms we put in the first offer that we could have been more aggressive with? Well, now we're gonna bring those up, okay? Remember, our seller is after 4 things, okay? Price, an uncomplicated offer, certainty, and the best timing. Well, so far we have only focused on price with our seller, but let's see if we can use our other variables to check those other boxes. After the price, our seller wants an uncomplicated offer. Right now we have layers of contingencies, all of which can represent a complication. All right, so for example, can we shorten the option period? All right, that's a potential complication, right? If you as the buyer come back asking for a ton of repairs, right, that's a complication. Can you remove the appraisal contingency? Can you shorten the timing for your financial contingency? All of these different contingencies are like a bitter pill our motivated seller has already swallowed at the reduced price. So wouldn't he be ecstatic if we offered to take them away, okay? Now, how about our seller's need for certainty? Can you increase your earnest money deposit? All right, maybe you offered 1%, right, in earnest money, and you come back offering 3%. So what you're communicating is, Mr. Seller, I am dead serious about buying your home. All right, you can be certain I plan on going through with this. Or how about this? We show proof of funds. Hey, Mr. Seller, I have $300,000 in cash. All right, you can be certain I will close this loan. In the back of the seller's mind, he's thinking, here I am accepting this low price and I don't even know if it's actually going to close. Then we have the issue of our fourth variable, timing. Usually a motivated seller wants a quick close, but occasionally they'll need a longer time frame. We want to use timing to best meet his needs. Remember, we came in saying we could close in 6 weeks, but now maybe we can come back and say we can close in 4 weeks. Or if we have a seller who needs extra time, okay, this may be when we throw in a free leaseback, all right? Maybe they're under contract to buy another home, so they need extra time. But with that, they need the certainty that the sale really will close. So do you see how you're meeting the needs of both certainty and timing? Right? We've increased the deposit plus offered a leaseback. Okay, so here's what we're after. Will the seller come down another $10,000 if we can satisfy all 4 of their needs instead of just price? Right now, this is where we say, Mr. Seller, we can do this and this and this and this, but our buyer's still just really struggling with the home needing a new fence. Right? It's just not worth $325,000 with them knowing they're going to have to go in and do all these repairs right off the bat. So we're understanding, right? We're compassionate, we're reasonable, right? You can often get your seller to come down even more at this point. They're probably gonna say they aren't gonna fix anything, so don't even ask during the option period. So just kind of keep that in mind. We usually still request repairs during the option period anyway, but just keep in mind that the seller may really balk at that. Now, do you see with these techniques, we've gotten our seller from $350,000 down to $325,000, which he said was his absolute rock bottom. And then we got him down even more to where we're at $315,000. Now, I focus mostly on pre-owned homes here, right? But many of these strategies will work with new construction as well. The issue is new construction contracts are more rigid, okay? So you have more variables to work with on a pre-owned home for negotiations. With new construction, you can offer things like a quicker close, but your options really are limited here, right? Because a lot of the variables we have with pre-owned, we just don't have with new construction. Now, that being said, okay, we have a whole different set of tools in our arsenal when it comes to negotiating with new construction. I made an entire video about negotiating new construction that you can watch right here. In the meantime, Wendy out.